You're listening to I Love It When, and I'm your host, Mo. I'm a speaker, coach, and connector. You're in the right place if you're looking for some inspiration and you're ready to truly embrace who you are. My intention with this podcast is to help you see that you are so much more powerful than you realize. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. My name is Margaret Smith. I go by Mo, and I'm your host. And today I am so excited to have Dr. Bradley Nelson on the podcast, the author of The Emotion Code. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast, you've heard me talk about the Emotion Code several times now. So I was really excited and grateful when I reached out to them that he was open to being on the podcast. I love having the opportunity to talk with someone who's done this research and has provided such a wealth of resources in just one book. I haven't even read the Body Code yet and done that piece, but the Emotion Code, has already had such an impact on me. So I'm having him on the podcast because it's made such an impact on me. And I could easily see within just 2 chapters how I could utilize this work and then how I could also teach it to my clients, friends, family. It is such an empowering book because the process is so simple, which I love. I love simplicity. It made sense to me immediately. And I saw how it could be applied in so many different ways in our lives, both personal and professional. So here's the 411 on Dr. Bradley Nelson. Veteran holistic physician Dr. Bradley Nelson is one of the world's foremost experts on natural methods of achieving wellness. He's the creator of the Emotion Code, the Body Code, and the Belief Code, and is the CEO of Discover Healing, a holistic education platform that provides training and certifies practitioners worldwide. His best-selling book, The Emotion Code, provides step-by-step instructions for working with the body's energy healing power. His new book is The Body Code, Unlocking Your Body's Ability to Heal Itself. For more information, visit discoverhealing.com. And I'll make sure to have some links below in the text as well. So in this episode, we talk about what started his whole journey with learning how to heal the body in the first place. What is energy healing and how does it work? Dr. Nelson shares some stories from people he's worked with from around the world. We talk about what are inherited trapped emotions and how does releasing these impact us and our ancestors and our current family. What is the heart wall and why do 93% of people suffer from having one? So I can't wait for you to check out this episode. Please be sure to share it with your family and friends. This book has made such an impact on me already that I can't wait to get certified myself. So enjoy. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of I Love It When. I'm really excited today to introduce you all to the author of The Emotion Code, Dr. Bradley Nelson. I have been talking about the Emotion Code quite a bit on my podcast already, so I was really excited when he agreed to spend some time with us all today. So thank you so much for being here. And I wonder if you could just start us off a little bit by telling a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on. I was a holistic chiropractic physician for about 18 years or so down in Southern California. And oh gosh, let's see. My story really starts out, by the way, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
My story really begins when I was 7 years old. I was really sick with the measles. And I had overheard my folks talking. I knew the plan was the next day I was going into something called an oxygen tent in the hospital. I didn't know what that was. But my folks had made a bed for me on the couch so I could be near their living room, or in the living room so I could be near their bedroom, sorry. And this one particular night, everyone else had gone to bed. My folks come into the room. My mom says to my dad, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so he'll be able to get well? And so they did. And my dad offers this prayer. And in the middle of this prayer, this change went through me in like 1 second. And I was instantaneously completely healed. And to go from being really sick one moment to being totally healthy in the next instant is so bizarre that I remember that like it happened yesterday. And that taught me a couple of things. It taught me that healing can happen instantly. And also it taught me that there's a higher power that we can draw upon. And so that's kind of been that idea that there's a higher power has been a real fundamental part of this work. And in fact, when I got into my practice, it was something that it was a habit that I had where before I would go to work on somebody, I would just take a moment and just ask for help, from God. And we all believe different things, but I happen to be a follower of Christ, and so trying to live like he lived and so on. But I would
Mhm.
just ask this silent prayer. And it was really amazing, Mo, because over the years, once in a while, information would just flood in response to that silent prayer, and information about, an understanding about what I needed to do to help this patient and so on. And so I was cataloging all of this information, everything that I worked, or everything that worked for my patients. I was logging into this system, and eventually I learned that uh, all my patients had something in common, and that was that they all had emotional baggage, and it was causing a lot of their symptoms. Mental, emotional, physical symptoms, and so that's why I eventually it became clear to me that this understanding had to go to the world. I couldn't just keep sitting on it. It wasn't just for me in my own
Mhm.
individual practice, although it was great. I mean, it really was helpful as a doctor. Also, another aspect is that I was a computer programmer starting back in the early 1980s, and
Okay.
probably long before you were born.
No, I was born in 1981,
Were
right
you
around
really?
there. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's the year I got
Yeah.
married. And
Okay.
so I took a computer programming class in 1980, the year before you were born. And during those early years, when you were little, I had a business called the Computer Tutor, where I would go into people's businesses and they'd have a brand new IBM PC, or some kind of a PC type computer, and they wouldn't know what to do with it because there was no software. So I would write the software. So then I ended up going to chiropractic school later, and that was a very powerful answer to prayer, actually. And and I remember sitting in class one day listening to my neurology instructor talking about how the brain is a computer, and I was a programmer, and I thought, well, gee, I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to hack into the brain
Hmm.
or find the back door. Will we ever be able to communicate directly with the brain of a patient? Because gee, the information must be in there about what's wrong with them and what they really need and so on. And I just thought that would be so amazing as a doctor to be able to do that. It would just be unbelievable. And I thought, maybe in 200 or 300 years we'll have that technology. Little did I know that that's exactly what I was going to be spending my whole career on, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so the emotion code was published in 2007. And the emotion code is this really simple method of finding and removing emotional baggage that causes all kinds of symptoms. And then about a year after the emotion code book came out, um, I woke up one morning and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was, you need to take everything that you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone everywhere. And so my initial thought was, are you sure about this? Because it sounds like it's going to take some work. And I'm kind of lazy. It took a year to create the first version of what we now call the body code. And now the body code, of course, is an app on your phone, right?
Hmm.
Looks like this. It's got the 6 different kinds of imbalances that people suffer from, and now we also have something called the belief code, which is how you can find all kinds of subconscious beliefs that are messing up your life and interfering with your ability to create the life you want. And so, in a nutshell, that's what I've been doing. We have a business called Discover Healing, and we've got about, I think, about 25 employees, and we have people that are scattered around different countries around the world, and we offer certification in these methods and training so that people can really learn these methods really, really well, and they build on each other. So the emotion code is level 1, body code is level 2, belief code is level 3, and yeah, and my wife and I, we've been married 43 years now, and we travel around the world and teach seminars, and I do interviews like this pretty much every day, and have done a lot of them. I think I've probably done 1,700 or so interviews by now after all these years, and it's
Wow.
always really fun because I love people. It's really fun to see you and meet you and connect with you and with your audience. And my
Hmm.
job is to just get the message out about all of this to the world, because you know we really need it. We
Hmm.
need some really powerful, really simple, really effective methods of healing that don't rely on medication, and that don't rely on surgery. I mean, Western medicine is great for acute problems, right?
Hmm.
Um, there's always probably going to be a need for medications for people, and that's fine, right? And there's always going to be need for surgeries, and people are always going to break legs or amputate limbs and things like that. And Western medicine is so great at that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. But for chronic problems or for other problems, most of the time, most people don't need some kind of pharmaceutical. And most of the time, most people don't need some kind of surgery. They just need to figure out what the underlying imbalances are that are
Mm-hmm.
blocking their body's ability to really manifest perfect health. And so that's what this stuff is. It's just a way to find those things. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily, I was a computer programmer, Mo, all those years ago when you were little. And that really helped me because it helped me to understand computer logic. And what I found
Mm-hmm.
was the subconscious mind inside of each one of us is a computer. It's a
Mm-hmm.
binary computer in terms of its interface, which means, like for example, I'm sitting at a laptop, it's got a keyboard and it's got a screen, right? So that you'd call that a screen slash keyboard interface. On my phone here, right? I've got little buttons, icons I can touch. And so it's a touch screen. I can see things. But the computer that is inside of each one of us doesn't have a screen, right? And there's no keyboard. So how do we figure out how does it communicate with us? It communicates with us through symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage, or things like cancer or all kinds of diseases, right? And physical pain, all kinds of malfunction. That all of those are symptoms, really, including things like not being able to find your soulmate or not being able to make enough money. All of those things I've come to realize over all these years as a holistic physician, all of these things are symptoms. And they're all symptoms of other things, other imbalances going on within the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting because Western medicine, of course, looks at the symptom as the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I mean, if you've got cancer or you're really super depressed and suicidal, things like that obviously are a problem. But the thing that's so interesting is the problem, the symptom, it's not really the problem. There are things causing those symptoms. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where this work comes in, the emotion code, body code, and belief code. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in a nutshell, we've certified now right around 15,000 emotion code practitioners in about, I think we added 10 countries, so probably about 90 countries now.
Wow.
And yeah, and I told my wife a couple of years ago, I said, you know what this means, don't you? And she said, no. I said, well, it means we could couch surf for the rest of our lives
Yes,
and wear out
effectively,
our
yeah.
welcome in one country after the other.
100%.
He
I
was not
love
that
that.
amused.
I love how you describe our subconscious as a computer program. I often talk about that with clients that I coach when we talk about different limiting beliefs and things that they want to rewire and like our ability to rewire that. Um, One of the questions I had for you is what helped you build your confidence in this method? I think one thing straight up is just the story that you shared of when you were a kid and you were instantly healed. But for somebody who's listening, I talk to a lot of people who are kind of skeptical, and I love talking to skeptical people because I think part of it is they just haven't allowed themselves to even consider other possibilities. How do you help people begin to kind of step into this idea of how energy works?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, what I used to do when I was in practice is when I had the book, I would just let people read the book, and that would help. But also, just sharing stories. For example, and it's fun because there are so many interesting stories, and quantum physics is the most fascinating topic I think in the world. But
Hmm.
I like to tell people about a book that was written by Dr. Rupert Sheldrake from Oxford. Fascinating book. It's called Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And so I could tell people this if I'm working on somebody, especially at a distance, and they're trying to figure out, well, how in the world is this even possible?
Hmm.
Energy medicine is it's very different from the Newtonian physics 3-dimensional world that we live in. It's very very different. Anyway, in this book, um, there are some dogs will, in fact, most dogs I think will be at the window or be at the door when the owner comes home, right? So
Hmm.
the question was, when does the dog go to the window? When does the dog go to the door? And people had different theories. Some people said, well, it's when the dog can hear the owner's car coming because, dogs have super hearing. And other people said, no, the dog must have some kind of a built-in little calendar and kind of knows automatically what time it is, and it'll go to the door at the same time. So they actually studied this, and they studied these dogs, put cameras on them, and had the owners at work. What they found was the moment the owner started thinking about going home, that is when the dog would go to the window.
Wow.
How is that possible? And
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Sheldrake talks about something that he calls the morphic field, which is the field of energy, the field of intelligence, the field of consciousness, really, that is between all of our bodies and that goes out and fills the universe. And so the studies that they've done also, where they've proven how particles can become entangled at vast
Mm-hmm.
distances. They'll split an atom and send these particles, apart from each other, and they're somehow still connected, even at vast distances. So that if an atom has been split and you get one particle that's deflected in a certain direction by a giant magnet, 10 miles away or even further, the other particle will deflect at the same time in the same direction. They're exactly uh, fully connected, even though they're vast distances apart. The great physicist and teacher Richard Feynman said, he said, if you don't think quantum physics is weird, you don't understand quantum physics, because it's weirder. I think he said it's weirder than you can think, right? Um, so I think things like that help, and then it also helps. Stories help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, sharing stories with people, and there are lots of those in the Emotion Code book. In fact, I'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
something. One of the reasons why I wrote the Emotion Code book in the beginning, back in 2007, was I was afraid I was going to forget some of the amazing stories that had happened to me. And then in 2019, we published the book again as a hardcover and expanded it. And that's the book that's sold now. But by then, there were so many stories from other people from all over the world. And the stories are really fun and amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
remember one of my favorite stories actually was from a woman uh, named, I think her name was Raluca. She wrote in from Italy. And she said, for years I had a bad marriage and then I got a new husband. And I'm reading this for the first time and I'm thinking, oh, okay. She got divorced, got a different husband. And no, no, no. She said what she did is she hired an emotion code practitioner from Budapest who worked on her husband at a distance, cleared his heart wall. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, it's like I got a brand new husband. He's kind and loving. And she said, and I had a heart wall too, and it changed my whole life, you know. So we're welcome to the 21st century. That's where we are now. And these things
Mm-hmm.
not only possible, they're routine.
Hmm. That was the stories are what hooked me immediately. I just cracked open the book in October and I actually started reading it with a small group of women business owners that I worked with. And I got into chapter like two and I was like, I immediately wanted to try it. So of course I had to skip ahead to the process to just start doing it because it made such sense to me as I've been practicing energy healing myself for like 4 years now. But to have this, there's something about this process that really aligns with the way that I work. And it really seems
Awesome.
to, for people who don't have an idea kind of how energy healing works, I use the pendulum usually when I'm doing it. And there's something about the process that I find that really helps people who know nothing about energy healing, like open up to it and try it. So it
Yeah.
was the stories immediately that got me because there's just countless stories of all these different experiences that people have had, and you can't deny all the ways in which it impacts people. So I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's hard to deny that. I mean, we have in our files, we've got over 10,000 uh, testimonials and stories from people from all over the world,
Hmm.
and people are the same all over the world, and it works. And the beauty of it is that all of this work, I think the most attractive thing about it is that it's so simple. And in fact,
Hmm.
kids can learn it. In fact, let me
Yes.
share a story with you.
Okay.
Um, we were at an event a number of years ago and met a lady, and she told us this story. She said that she had started reading the emotion code and started listening to it. as an audiobook, and her son started reading it and listening to it as well. And after a while, he started practicing with his friends, and she thought it was cute, but didn't pay much attention. Well, a couple of weeks go by, and the phone rings, and the woman that's calling identifies herself as the mother of one of this woman's son's friends. And she says, "Listen, my son has a severe phobia of water." And she said, it's been very disruptive to our life and to his life. We've tried everything to fix it. Nothing has touched it. She said, "I'm at the community pool right now, and my son's out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his entire life." She said, "Your son did this. How is this even possible? What is he doing?" And those two boys are only 11,
Wow.
right? 11 years old. And that illustrates, how powerful, yet also how simple it can be. Because I mean,
Oh,
if
yeah.
an 11-year-old can do it, you know,
Hmm. That's
like,
amazing. I
yeah.
love all the different stories too about when you release inherited trapped emotions and
Mm.
how that affects the rest of your family. That has been especially intriguing to me because I love making an impact on other people, especially when it comes to my family. And it's been amazing to see the impact already with different people that I've done this with, how they feel it and they kind of feel that release. Can you explain for people the inherited trapped emotions piece?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let me tell you about a research study that was done probably now about, I think, 10 to 15 years ago, I think, in Atlanta. They were studying inheritance. And so they were using mice. And what they would do is uh, the mice were in some kind of a cage where they could electrify the floor a little bit to give them kind of a mild shock, enough to be a little bit uncomfortable, I guess. And at the same time, when they would blow in the scent of cherry blossom, and so pretty soon, of course, these mice, if they smell cherry blossom, they'd have a fear reaction. Well, then what they found was that the offspring of those mice somehow would have the same reaction.
Mm,
If the offspring that had never ever been shocked themselves, if they smelled cherry blossom, they'd have the same reaction. And they were trying to figure out how in the world is the adult mouse teaching, the little mice
yeah.
how to avoid cherry blossom. I mean, it just seemed impossible and crazy. So then what they did is they took sperm from mice that had been sensitized across the campus, and they impregnated female mice that had never smelled cherry blossom and had never been shocked. Their offspring were sensitized. If they smell cherry blossom immediately, they'd have a fear reaction.
Wow.
And so this was mind blowing to the scientific community because, um, it the mechanism behind this just was not able to be comprehended. I mean, and so scientists are looking at DNA under a microscope, trying to figure out, well, how in the world are the genes?
Hmm.
But see, this is a quantum phenomenon.
Hmm.
And so we would call this trapped emotions. In fact, we're very soon going to start a study where we're going to replicate that study that was done back then, and we're going to release the emotional energies, the trapped emotions from these mice, and then what we're going to see is that those offspring mice, I believe,
Wow.
are no longer sensitized. So that's
Okay.
also going to be a very, very important landmark study. But anyway, what we have found is that just like with the mice, um, if we have some intense emotional event that happens to us, and the energy of that event is within us and it's trapped, we may, on a subconscious level, decide when our child is conceived to pass that energy to that child. And it's an effort, I think, really to it's an automatic effort by mammals that helps to protect their offspring and their
Hmm.
descendants. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you're an elk on the mountain and you're in a meadow and you're almost taken down and killed by a pack of wolves, but you manage to escape, and then you have offspring, for
Hmm.
generation upon generation, those new elk offspring will avoid that area. They won't know why, but they'll just avoid that area. And so scientists are saying now that this kind of traumatic inheritance goes down the line about 14 generations.
Wow.
Now, with human beings, it can go much further, is what we're finding. And there are books written about this. For example, there was a book written about the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, documenting how they're much more susceptible to stress and to illness and so on, and how
Hmm.
their DNA is not quite the same as a normal person. And the only thing they could attribute those changes to were the traumatic experiences that their ancestors went through during the Holocaust. So what we find is that we've been doing this for a long time. Emotional energies can be received at conception from mom or dad, and they might have received that at conception from their mom or dad, and these can go back for many generations. The furthest one I personally have seen one go back is about 47 generations. Usually they go back, maybe 5 or 10, sometimes 20, but it's another really interesting thing because our own lives are the product not only of our emotional baggage from in many ways our lives are colored, we'll say, by our emotional baggage
Mm-hmm.
that we've picked up in our own lives, from being bullied as a child to the divorce that we went through, or breakups, or difficult work situations, or whatever it might be. But also we're carrying baggage for those ancestors, and it's wild how this kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff affects us because you might have a problem right now with relationships, and a key component of that may be that your eighth great grandmother was jilted at the altar. You might
Mm-hmm.
have money now because maybe your great 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 grandfather was thrown into the poorhouse, and so
Mm-hmm.
we're all carrying those kinds of energies.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about the emotion code is it makes it so easy to find that kind of stuff and release it,
Yeah.
as right? Really rapid.
Yeah. I think that's what got me so excited because I recognized that through learning about energy healing that I was carrying stuff that didn't belong to me that was then affecting the decisions I was making on a daily basis. So when I found this process, I was like, oh, I broke out my journal. I think I've released over 130 emotions of my own over the last couple months as I've been doing this. But to think that you could so easily target the root cause of something, that's
Yeah.
what I always try to get out as a coach is like you've said, there's not just looking at the symptoms, but like what's beneath that. Um, I just love the simplicity of that. I love, yeah, yeah. I also, it reminds me of the story that you shared in the book, how you were speaking up on stage and you released an inherited trapped emotion, and there was a medium in the audience who came up to you afterwards and shared
Yeah.
that she also saw the descendants in front of the stage, and I was just
Right.
mind blown.
I know.
But of course, that makes so much sense because you're releasing it from the whole line.
Yeah.
Just the power behind that was just, that was mind blowing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was mind blowing for me too.
I bet. Yeah. I wanted to take a moment to share about this upcoming retreat I have in downtown Everett, Washington at Kindred Healing Space. It's June 6th through the 8th, and the theme of this retreat is Step into Your Power. You can go to iloveitwhen.org for all information and to purchase your ticket today. This is the first time I've ever hosted one of my retreats here in Everett, and over the last 12 months, this retreat has been brewing in my energy, and I felt very called to offer something super local. I know many people in the Pacific Northwest have been intrigued by my retreats in the past, but haven't had the opportunity to attend one as of yet. This is for you. This retreat is also unique in that for the first time ever, I'm offering a one-day ticket option. This is for you if you're curious, but you're not quite ready to commit to the full 3 days yet. The one-day ticket option gives you access to the energy of this retreat for the entire first day, in which you'll hear and get access to each of our main speakers. Of course, I encourage you to attend for the full 3 days, especially if you feel pulled to this retreat at all in the first place. That usually means there's something here for you. This feels delicious, incredibly intentional, and full of magic. I'll see you this coming June at Kindred Healing Space in Everett, Washington. Could you talk a little bit more about how these trapped emotions affect our health and what you've seen? So when someone comes to see you, do you immediately go for the emotion code, or is that just one of, I'm sure it's one of the tools that you use, but not all?
Well, I've been retired from practice now. I'll tell you what happened. I retired from my brick and mortar practice in 2004, so I could write this book, The Emotion Code.
Mm.
And then as I was writing the book, when I got towards the end, I thought, people need help, and I can do this. I can help them at a distance. So I thought I better put something in here. So I created a page online where people could make an appointment, with me, and and gee, it didn't take long. Within a short time, I had this whole other practice that I had never really intended to create, but it was a remote practice. So I did that for about 2.5 years and then turned that over to someone else because I just didn't have time to do it. So I don't really see people anymore. But the beauty of it is the subconscious mind within each one of us knows exactly what it is we need and what the top priority is.
Hmm.
And so when I was in practice, it was so interesting because, during the last 10 years of my practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no hope for them in Western medicine. They couldn't be cured. And so there was nothing that could be done for them. And so those were the kind of people that I saw. And the vast majority of them, with just a few exceptions, were able to actually get well. And so it got to a point where I wasn't really afraid at all of taking on basically any kind of issue. And I knew that I wasn't really curing anything. What I would tell people is, look, I just work here. My job is just to find the things that are in your body's way of healing
Mm-hmm.
itself naturally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
body is so powerful. It wants to be healed. It wants to be well, but it needs help
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And so I remember one time I had a new patient that came in. Um, she was middle-aged lady that was suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and she was pretty sick. And I remember after the exam and after her consultation with me, it was her very first visit. I said to her, "Well," I said, "I'm basically clueless about what's wrong with you." And her eyes got really big. And I said, "But wait, it's okay." I said, I was in a mood that day. I said, "It's okay. Your subconscious mind knows exactly what's going on with you, and I know how to talk to it. And so, it's going to be okay." And so, we were able to help her. I remember another young woman that came in one day that was, I don't remember what was going on with her, but she was quite ill. And and as I was working with her and doing this exam, I was finding lots of different kinds of imbalances, lots of organs imbalance, lots of glands and chakras and meridians and things. And she started to cry because I was finding so many imbalances. And I said, "Hey," I said, "don't cry. If we don't find any imbalances, then we don't have anything to fix." And so, it's fine. And she got well. So, um, we're living in this fascinating time where these tools are being given to us so that we can learn how to help ourselves and how to get
Mm-hmm.
out of our own way and how to release the ancestral traumas. And,
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite things actually is speaking to Native American groups because they have so much ancestral trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and also blacks who whose ancestors were slaves. It's fascinating the things that come down to
Yes.
them, and a lot of inherited stuff that now
Mm-hmm.
is. And we all have inherited stuff, but some of our ancestors have more than others, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because
Absolutely.
if you're Jewish, yeah, there might be pogroms in your past, or black, maybe it's slavery. Although really, if you go back very far, I mean, it seems like all cultures have some kind of slavery at some point. In fact, the
Mm-hmm.
Slavic people, that's where the word slave comes from, I guess, is you know the
Mm-hmm.
the Slavs were enslaved, and so slavery's been a feature of this world. And that creates a lot of emotional baggage
Mm-hmm.
that then passes down and affects you. And so yeah, it's interesting stuff. But the inherited emotions, releasing those is so much fun because it's really so easy. And the other
Yeah.
thing that we find, like the story that you're alluding to, um, those emotional energies also release apparently from those ancestors as well
Mm-hmm.
when it's released from somebody that's in
Mm-hmm.
that line. In fact, a story that I don't know if I put this story in the book, um, but there was a practitioner that told us once about this experience that she had. She said that she was working on herself by herself one day in her room, and she came across this emotion that was inherited, and the emotion was shame. And she started tracing it back. She got it from her mother, who got it from her mother, who got it from her mother. And I think she got it from her mother. So I think it was her great grandmother. And all of a sudden, this woman appears in her room, just like materializes. And it was this great grandmother. And she tells her that she was sexually abused as a little girl and for many
Wow.
years. And, you know, things being what they were back then, in those days, it was just an incredibly shameful secret. And she could never, ever tell anyone what had happened. And so she lived her entire life, and she died an old woman and took that secret with her to the grave, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then all these years later, here's this great great granddaughter, I guess, or great granddaughter that's working on her. And the two of them actually wept together. And I thought, that's really a
Wow.
wild story.
Oh
But,
yeah.
you know, I, I
I've had
believe,
that happen multiple times with clients where I've especially found that because I'm a healer and I like to do it with other healers because they can really see and feel things and express them really easily because they're used to doing that work. And it's
right.
been fascinating to do it with other healers because a lot of times things come up where we have to have a conversation, like we have to pause and have a conversation with the ancestors and say, hey, it's okay for her to release this emotion. She doesn't need to hold on to it
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So yeah, I love stories like that. It's just so, it's a very empowering process. And I love how you said that it's fun because that's how I approach it.
Mhm.
And
It
I
is
think
so fun.
some of my friends have been like, I don't really want to do this work, but then I find when I'm doing it with you, I'm actually having a good time. And I'm like, how could you not when you're freeing
Yeah.
yourself just like layer by layer? It
Right.
brings me so much joy. Yeah, yeah. Can
Oh
you
my
talk a
God.
little bit about the heart wall and
Yeah.
how you discovered that and what that means?
Well, uh, yes, absolutely. My wife woke me up early one morning in 1998, and she said that she'd had a dream. And as I was trying to help her decipher this dream, suddenly I had what I can only describe as a waking vision where the room that I was in suddenly was gone, and I'm seeing this unbelievably beautiful hardwood floor. And I mean, it looked like a mirror. It was just absolutely gorgeous. I've never seen one like that anywhere. I've searched for pictures, I've never seen one like that. Um, but at the same time that I'm seeing this, and this is in like high definition 3D, and this lasted for about 3 or 4 minutes. This is one of the craziest experiences I've ever had. As I'm seeing this floor, I have this understanding that comes into my mind that my wife's heart is underneath this floor. Now, I have no idea what this means. And I told my wife what I was seeing and understanding. She didn't know what it meant either. So we prayed, asked God to help us. And then I started doing muscle testing on her, right? Communicating with her subconscious, asking yes and no questions. And what we found was that her heart was encased by layers and layers of emotional baggage, emotional energies that had been built up around her heart to protect her heart from being totally broken.
Mm.
And it started when she was 2 years old. That's when the first layer was created. She was born into a very volatile family. Her dad was a rageaholic, and it was just really dysfunctional. And so by age 2, her subconscious decided, you know what, our heart's going to break unless we do something, and so started building a wall. Well, guess what? I mean, initially, Mo, I thought, wow, this is just Jean's thing. She's had a lot of weird things. But what I found out later was that like 93% of people have put up this kind of a wall.
Wow.
And it's amazing what can happen when the wall is taken down. People fall in love who never thought they would.
Hmm.
Pain goes away. In fact, one of my favorites, my favorite story, my favorite emotion code story is that's probably in the book too. But for your listeners and viewers, I'll share this one.
Hmm.
This one of the next people that I saw after this was a woman that came in to see me. She had really bad neck pain. It was about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale of pain.
Wow.
And she'd seen a couple of other doctors for it, and they hadn't been able to help her. So she came to see me, and I started talking with her, and she told me that she was single, and she was going to stay single. She was going to be single the rest of her life. She was basically celibate, and she had not dated in 8 years and was never going to date again. And she was only 38 years old, and she was, she was an attractive woman. And I said, well, why do you feel this way? I mean, how'd you come to this kind of a conclusion? And she said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy that dumped her and broke her heart, right? So I tested her and found, sure enough, she had built up this wall of energy, this force field around her heart that we call a heart wall. And there were three emotions making up this wall. And when I cleared the last one of those, they all had to do with the breakup, by the way, from 8 years before. When I cleared
Hmm.
the last one, all of a sudden, her heart wall was gone. And with it went the neck pain. I mean, completely. It went from a 9 to a 0 instantaneously.
Wow.
She couldn't believe it. And I was thrilled, that it worked. And so she leaves the office feeling great, doesn't come back for 3 months. And 3 months later, she walks into my office, and I'll never forget this. I saw her in my hallway, and I said, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on?" And she said, She said, my neck has been fine since I was here, but she said, you cleared that heart wall for me, and that really works because she said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating and we're in love. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him, And I thought, wow, yeah, I thought you were celibate, you know? But now I want you to think about this, okay? Why? Oh, I mean, her childhood sweetheart living right around the corner for 8 years. Why didn't she ever run into him ever on a
Yeah.
walk or driving? Nothing. Well, because she had this wall, and so she wasn't open to that at all.
Hmm.
And suddenly, when the wall comes down, boom, she meets him. And this is
Hmm.
how relationships work. See, uh, relationships and falling in love and finding your soulmate does not happen with this brain. It happens with
Hmm.
the heart brain, see?
Hmm.
And there are whole books written about cellular memory, how if you get a heart transplant from somebody, um, you might inherit the affinities and the loves and even the memories, some of the memories of the donor. And, you know, it's so interesting. And the ancients believed that the heart was the seat of the soul, a source of love and creativity and romance. And really, we're finding out now that what they believed is actually true. I mean, if you look it up in Western medicine or a Western biology textbook, you won't
Hmm.
see any of that.
Hmm.
It'll just talk about how the heart is a pump; it just pumps blood. That's all it is. But no, I believe the heart's really the seat of the subconscious, and so that's the heart wall.
Hmm.
But so so many stories. I mean, people have written to us telling us that when their heart wall's taken down for the first time in their life, they know what it's like to feel love. They know what it's like to feel joy. Other people have told us that for the first time in their life, they can feel the love of the creator for them. I mean, how profound is that?
It's
And
huge.
creative ideas start to flow for people. See, the best ideas that you'll ever have won't come from this brain. They'll come from this brain, right?
Hmm.
And that's why, you graduate high school or whatever it is, and what are you told? Well, you should follow your heart, right? And that's
Hmm.
great advice, but what if you have a heart wall? Well, then you're kind of hampered, aren't you? And 93% of people have this.
Hmm.
And if we can get rid of about 1% more,
Hmm.
I think it's going to change the whole world, and the whole world
Hmm.
is going to transform because we're going to hit that tipping point.
Hmm.
People have seen that in
Yeah.
dreams, and visions, and all kinds of things since the very beginning of this.
Yeah, it's so in alignment with the work that I do, and I think that's why I gravitated to it so quickly because I part of my mission is that people get to the point where they really feel like they can truly be themselves and go after what they want. And so by removing things that don't belong to them and really being able to follow their heart, it just gives I have found in what I've done so far on myself and on other people that it's like it gives them permission. Like they're finally able to give themselves permission to do what they actually want when they
Yeah,
feel that energy is gone. So it's
absolutely.
so cool to see it happen. Uh, I always ask everybody who comes on my podcast, how do you define what intuition is? Because we've been talking about energy healing and the emotion code process, and I love how you address all these different topics in your book. You talk about intuition, you talk about
Mhm.
asking God for help and bringing that peace in. How do you define what intuition is?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that first of all, there are different kinds of intuition for different people. Um, for me, I don't usually see things.
Hmm.
I usually just kind of have a knowing, right? And
Hmm.
that's another kind of intuition. I have definitely heard things before. I've heard voices. That's another kind of intuition. So, everybody has different gifts that way, and will receive their intuition in different ways. Um, I'll tell you what I think. I think that I think the most important form of intuition, really, for us, is the kind of intuition that comes when we're actually asking for help. And I believe that that intuition comes to us from the angels that surround us, that speak to us. And so, that intuition often comes in such a subtle way that I think we often miss it because it
Hmm.
comes as just a little impression, or maybe a thought or an idea or a certain
Hmm.
feeling, right? And oftentimes, we'll have an idea and we'll think, "Oh man, I'm so smart. Look what I came up with." But often those are coming from, they're coming from those angels around us. And
Hmm.
we know, because people have seen this, where when someone's doing a session trying to work on somebody, if they take a moment and ask for help, that's when the angels come in and stand behind that practitioner or that person to try to help whoever it is they're working on, even if they're working on themselves.
Mhm.
So, so yeah, I think that that's probably the best form of intuition because it's coming from the right place. I think that there is also our own being, and we have our own I am, you might want to call it, right, within
Mhm.
us. That's also incredibly intelligent, and I think the subconscious mind within each one of us is more intelligent than we can really begin to comprehend. And so I
Mhm.
think that our own being can also just give us intuition and messages and things because it's aware of things we're not consciously aware of, right? So so yeah, I think that that's how that goes. I and like I said, a lot of the time, unless we're listening really carefully,
Mhm.
we might miss those little clues and things that come.
I think that's the perfect way to say it because sometimes it's so subtle that, and our brain, our logical brain is so loud and so
Right.
not subtle that it's taken me, I know, a long time to really tune in to the more
Yeah.
subtle messages. Where's your energy focused on right now for all of this work? Are there any upcoming events or things that you want to share with
Yeah,
people that are
well,
listening?
we're going to Japan in May, and we're actually hoping to go to Vietnam also because the book is available in Vietnam. We have no arrangements or anything there. We're just looking at that now, but we've got a seminar coming up in Tokyo, I think on the 23rd and 24th of May. It's really interesting, you know, going to Asia. Uh, Gee, you know, for example, we went to Taiwan, went to one of the biggest hospitals in Taiwan, and you know, I spoke to all these doctors and nurses, standing room only, you know, for like 2 hours, and you know, a lot of these doctors had read the emotion code. They were so excited about it. They gave me an award, you know, and uh, and then going to Japan and going into hospitals over there and you know and talking to their doctors and explaining this to them. And it's so interesting because they're so much more open in Asia than they are here. I've never been
Hmm.
invited, you know, to even get close to a hospital here with any of the work that I do. I spoke at a fibromyalgia support group once at a hospital for like an hour, and after that, they disbanded the the group. I thought, well, I hope they didn't do that on my, you know, on my account, but
It is really interesting to know. And uh, I've talked to some different sound healers and people that I've had on the podcast before where I've said, wouldn't it be amazing if they would allow sound healers to come through the hospital and just clear the space after patients have been in or between patients and things like that? I think
yeah,
this is where, I mean, next level medicine needs to be headed. It is
yeah.
fascinating.
I think
Yeah.
that's where it's going. But I will tell you that I don't see it happening first in the U.S.
Hmm.
Although now, you know, with the political changes and with RFK Jr. getting in, I don't know who anything's possible. I guess
Hmm.
now because I never thought he'd get in the position where he is as head of HHS. That's amazing. But I think it'll probably really start in Asia.
Hmm.
And we've got one particular hospital, for example, not too far from Tokyo, that really wants to integrate the work that we're doing. And so part of the reason we're going back over in May is to kind of further that along. But you know, as I see it in the future, um, I think that I think we're going to move eventually to the ideal situation where if you're a patient, if you're sick, you go to the hospital. Well, your subconscious mind is going to be queried. What is it that your subconscious really needs? Because
Wow.
the thing is, the subconscious knows it's in touch with this database at the morphic field, the universal intelligence. And so it's aware of all pharmaceuticals, it's aware of
Hmm.
all of these things that we can't even imagine. And so when you ask the subconscious mind, what do you need? Well, maybe it will need a certain medication. Maybe it does need surgery. Maybe the body needs that. Maybe, you know, maybe it just has emotional baggage. Maybe it's got a number of things going on. And
Hmm.
so I foresee that eventually that's going to be, hopefully, that'll become the norm in the world because really we all deserve that. I
Hmm.
think, you know, I think that the other understanding that's really coming about and is growing is this understanding that we are actually divine beings, that we're divine in nature. We have this subconscious mind, really the spirit within us, I think, that I believe that we've always existed uh, without beginning and that we'll have no end. Well, of course, we
Mm-hmm.
can't comprehend that, but that's what I believe. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that when we come into this world, our ability to access all of our intelligence is severely dialed back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are divine reasons why we're here, and we're kind of operating in this conscious mind, which is a tiny, infinitesimally tiny fraction of our total intelligence. The rest of it is subconscious to us. But the fact now that there's an easy way to tap into that and find whatever it is that's going on. I mean, not only trapped emotions, but for example, with the body code, we can find things like pathogens, and we can find things like um, toxins and misalignments and uh, disconnections between the spirit and the physical body and all kinds of things. Um, the beauty of that is that it's almost like with these codes that I've been so privileged to be involved in bringing to the world, that it's like we're, the subconscious mind now is opening like a book so that we can actually read it, ask
Mm-hmm.
questions, get answers, and how cool is that? I mean, I thought it was going to take 200 or 300 years to get to this point, and yet here we are.
Yeah. 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 I've used the emotion code on my business. I ask questions about money. I ask questions about all sorts of things. So it's been really cool. And I haven't yet gotten into the body code. I'm excited to go there next.
Oh yeah, you'll love that.
Um,
And then the belief code beyond that is
yeah.
unbelievable because we're able to find those belief systems that are hampering people and get rid of those.
Hmm.
I mean, it's so interesting because when you start thinking about energy and you start to understand how it all works,
Hmm.
I had an experience just recently, a couple weeks ago. A very good friend of ours had been trying to sell a house for an entire year. And we were talking about this and how difficult it was. And what we found was that the couple that had been living there before built this house as their dream house. And not long after they moved in, she's diagnosed with cancer and dies.
Oh, wow.
Well, he has this tremendous grief, right? Well, that energy of grief was still in the house.
Hmm.
And so it isn't just living beings like, animals and humans that can trap these energies. So we cleared that energy, and this will sound unbelievable, but the house sold the next day.
I
They
believe
got
it.
they got an
Yeah.
offer next day, and boom, sold it. Yep.
Wow.
Because people would walk in there
I
and
could
they wouldn't
feel it.
really, yeah, on a subconscious level, consciously
Hmm.
they wouldn't know, but subconsciously they would just feel like, well, I don't know, I just don't think this is the right place. It's beautiful, but they wouldn't know why. See?
Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah.
was in real estate actually for 8 years before I started my business.
Okay.
And a mentor of mine who's local in the area, her part of her job is she goes around and clears homes.
Yeah.
And and it's so real. It's so true. Like consciously you're not aware of why do I not want to buy this house, but there's your subconscious is
Yeah.
like, nope, there's a bunch of grief here.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly
so
right. Isn't that
fascinating.
wild? Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah,
have a lot of
yeah.
stories like that. It's really fun. Uh,
I
just another
bet.
aspect, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I'm really excited
Sure.
for people to get the chance to listen if they haven't already read the book. I think now hopefully they'll be prompted to check it out.
Yeah.
Uh, I like to end each episode with what's your current I love it when, either for yourself right now or for the world.
Well, I love it when people are able to take back that birthright that belongs to them, and that's the ability to heal themselves most of the time and heal their family members, their kids, their parents, their grandparents, their
Mhm.
friends, their loved ones. That's what that's what I love. I love it when that happens, and how exciting that is for people and how empowering it is.
Mhm.
That's what I love.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much for today. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Mo. All right, take care.